Hi there, my name is Neil Blevins, and this lesson is called Mood Boards, Design Packets, and Callout Sheets. So the process of gathering a reference, in my opinion, is one of the most important things you can do when making art. But now that you have all that reference, what should you do with it, and how do you use it to communicate your intentions to a team of people? That's where reference boards, design packets, and callout sheets come into play. So boards, packets, and callout sheets come in a lot of different flavors depending on what's on them and who you're trying to communicate with. And here's just a few examples. So you have reference boards, mood boards, inspiration boards, reference packets, design packets, modeling packets, shading packets, and then callout sheets, modeling callout sheets, set dressing callout sheets, and shading callout sheets. But regardless of the name, the core idea is the same, and that is to communicate ideas using pre-existing photos or stills from games or movies. And by the way, just as an aside, the term reference or mood board came from back when you took actual photographs or collages of magazine clippings, sometimes even physical objects like swatches of materials, attach them to a foam board that you then put on a wall during a meeting. And nowadays these are almost always done digitally, but the name has stuck. So let's start with the different types, and the first type is called a reference board, mood board, or inspiration board. So these tend to be at the earliest stage of production on either a project or a smaller part of a project, and they're primarily reference images since the concept phase hasn't happened yet. Like this image here is a reference board for a Dyson Sphere project, which includes reference from a TV show, a game, another artist, and a random piece of imagery from the internet. Or say I'm working on a film, and my boss wants me to design a chair for our fictional sci-fi world. And he gives me a concept brief. Speaking of which, by the way, about 2 months ago, I think, I made a video about concept briefs, which it might be worth checking out after this video, because part of doing a concept brief is basically creating a mood board that you then hand off to the designer who's going to design the thing. But anyway, getting back to this one, what I'll do, the first thing I'll do after I receive a brief is I will make a personal reference board. And this will be a collection of reference images from my own library, so photos I've taken myself, and then images from the internet, anything that relates to the job I'm trying to do. So in this chair example, many of the images might be different styles of chairs, but some images might have nothing to do with chairs, but they have some sort of detail that I want to include in my chair design. Then I'll show this board to my boss to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then of course, I'm going to use the reference for the next part of my job, which is actually designing the chair. And of course, reference boards don't have to be specific to concept design. So a director of photography, for example, they might have a mood board to show the type of lighting from other films that they want to use as a reference for the lighting in the film they're about to do. And then they show this to the director to see what they think. Like here's an example of a mood board of sort of film noir and harsh lighting scenarios. Or if you're designing a character, it's quite often that you see a mood board of famous faces, and little elements of which you want to include in the character that's about to be designed. Or a mood board could even be something as simple as color schemes. So you're trying to decide the colors for a set, or exploring different combinations of color for other things that you're going to design. And of course, a mood board can be all of the above on the same board. It doesn't have to be only one of these types of things. It can be everything all together. Also, I worked on a film once where we had an anti-mood board, which was a board of reference from other movies that this particular film didn't want to emulate. And it was kind of funny because the board included a film that I had previously worked on. And so I told that to the director, but I promised them I'd stay away from that style for their particular film. So now that we've talked about boards, let's talk about the second type, which is packets, or more specifically reference, design, modeling, or shading packets. So these tend to be done after the concept phase has happened and usually include a concept drawing or painting and then some reference material. So the first question is, who is the intended audience for the packet? Since you're later in production, whereas mood boards and reference boards might be seen by a bunch of different types of people, this tends to be a little more focused and is usually meant for a specific audience. So for example, the modeling packet is made specifically for a team of 3D modelers who will be taking the concept artist's design and making a 3D model. In this sort of design or modeling packet, you'll likely see the final painting for the concept or a very detailed drawing, maybe a few orthogonal views of the design, and maybe some small sketches to show a few details. But you can also include pre-existing imagery. For example, photos of similar types of machinery from the real world for the 3D modeler to take inspiration from. Or you could even do a very, very rough sketch and then include a lot of extra reference if you want the 3D modeler to bring more of their own experience to the table. And then you can also do the same sort of packet for a shading artist, which are the people who texture the models, or the same kind of thing for a layout artist or a set dresser, which is the person who places the objects in the scene. Or you can do an overall design packets that contains all of these together. And finally, the third type is the callout sheet. So a callout sheet is very similar to a packet, except the reference tends to be on the same page as the concept design, and then there are arrows for you to call out the tiny little details. So this image you see here is a callout sheet for a giant robot. So in this case you have the piece of concept art, which is a photobashed painting of the materials on a rough 3D model. And then the callouts show the real-world examples of all the different parts of the robot, so the shading or texturing artist will know what sorts of material they should be making and how dirty or clean the different parts should be. So just going over this quickly, I have up here, so here's showing off hydraulics, which is here in the painting. And then on the elbow here, this is a couple of examples of the sort of metal which will go on this area here. And then on the hand, these parts are also metal, but instead of being rounded like these parts, they're flat. And so here's an example of some flat metal. Then here's some various text elements and little like logos and whatnot, and that shows off sort of what I'm expecting for the text. See how like in here it's actually really cool. You have this sort of bleed in the paint, and so getting that on there would be really awesome. Then a little vent here showing an example of that. And let's jump over here for a second. So here's the lights on the front of the robot. And then on the interior here, there are some pipes and stuff like that. So here's some example of pipes. And then this little area up here sort of talks about the base material, which is a semi-matte painted military metal. And here's some good examples of that. And that's sort of the base material on the whole robot. And then down here is talking about the dirt, and sort of showing off some of the rust and some of the overall dirt that would be on the surface and some bigger clumps of dirt, which should appear down lower on the robot. And some of these reference images here were reference images I used when I painted this robot, and other ones I got afterwards, again, to sort of show off to whoever is going to do the final texturing on this what I was thinking of when I was doing the design. So lastly, a few tips about making better boards, packets, and callout sheets. So you need to ask, are you making it for yourself or the team? And if it's for yourself, then these things can be very loose. But if you're making it for a team of people, I highly recommend these three things. And so number one is add commentary. So don't just use images, but also add little captions that explain the images. For example, if I'm going to be making a big robot and I include an image of a bulldozer but no further explanation, then the person who sees the reference might be asking, should I be noticing the size of the vehicle, or the weathering on the vehicle, or the way the paint on the vehicle looks? And maybe your original intent was for them to notice a really cool vent on the side of the vehicle, but since you didn't specify that, they got the wrong idea. So definitely make sure to add commentary. Then include URLs. So if you're using reference from other films, games, or from the internet, include the name of the film or game, or the URL that you got the image from, so that the artist can use that as a springboard to find more reference for themselves. And then number three, high-res originals. So as well as including the final mood board, include all the original reference images that you use to make the mood board, since they might be higher resolution than the images that were included in the board. So in conclusion, no matter what you call them or their exact format, using reference to communicate to yourself or a team of people is a really valuable tool in the commercial artist's repertoire. So the next time you work on one of these projects, try making a reference board or a design packet or a callout sheet. Or if you're presented with one, now hopefully you'll have some idea what they are and how they can best be used. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this interesting. Feel free to go to neilblevins.com and the art lessons section if you want to read more lessons and tutorials about art-related topics. And feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you'll be notified the next time I upload a new video. Thank you very much.